What happens when Hollywood's biggest action star walks into the lion's den of daytime television and refuses to back down from a confrontation that spirals completely out of control? Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive celebrity interviews ever recorded, where Tom Cruise found himself in a verbal battlefield with Whoopi Goldberg that ended with security being called and cameras cutting to commercial. This isn't your typical promotional interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how quickly things can escalate when egos clash and tempers flare. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because you're going to want to discuss this jaw-dropping encounter with fellow viewers. The tension was palpable from the moment Tom Cruise walked onto the set of The View. What was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance for his latest action blockbuster quickly transformed into something far more sinister. The atmosphere felt different that morning, charged with an undercurrent of hostility that the studio audience could sense but couldn't quite pinpoint. Well, 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 look who decided to grace us with his presence, Whoopi Goldberg announced. As Tom made his entrance, her tone dripping with sarcasm that immediately caught everyone off guard. The other panelists, Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, exchanged glances that spoke volumes about the unexpected direction this interview was already taking. Tom's trademark smile flickered for just a moment before he composed himself, settling into the guest chair with the practiced ease of someone who had done thousands of interviews. "Good morning, ladies. Thank you for having me on the show." "Oh, we're just thrilled," Whoopi continued, her voice laden with barely concealed disdain. "I mean, it's not every day we get to sit across from someone who thinks they can just waltz in here and expect us to play along with their little publicity game." The studio fell silent. Even the crew members behind the cameras seemed to freeze, sensing that something was about to go very wrong. Joy Behar, never one to shy away from controversy, leaned forward with interest, while Sarah Haynes looked visibly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that," Tom replied, his voice steady but his eyes betraying a hint of confusion mixed with growing irritation. "I thought we were here to discuss my new film and maybe have some fun conversation." Whoopi let out a bitter laugh that echoed through the studio. "Fun conversation? Oh, that's rich. You want to have fun while you sit there pretending to be America's sweetheart when we all know what you really are." Sunny Hostin, clearly sensing the need to intervene, attempted to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Tom, let's talk about your latest movie. The stunts look absolutely incredible, and I know our audience would love to hear about your preparation process." But Whoopi wasn't finished. She held up a hand, effectively silencing Sunny, and fixed Tom with a stare that could have melted steel. "No, no, no. We're not doing the usual song and dance today. I think our viewers deserve to hear some real talk from Mr. Cruise here." Tom's jaw tightened, and for the first time since sitting down, his composure began to crack. "With all due respect, Whoopi, I came here in good faith to promote my film and have a pleasant conversation with you ladies. If you have some personal issue with me, perhaps we should discuss it privately rather than ambushing me on live television." "Ambushing you?" Whoopi's voice rose an octave, causing several audience members to shift uncomfortably in their seats. "You think this is an ambush? This is called accountability, something you Hollywood elites seem to think you're immune to." Alyssa Farah Griffin, the newest member of the panel, looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. This was clearly not the kind of interview she had signed up for when she joined the show. Meanwhile, Joy Behar was practically rubbing her hands together with glee, sensing the kind of television gold that ratings were built on. Accountability for what exactly? Tom's voice was getting sharper now, his famous charm giving way to something more dangerous. "You're making accusations without even specifying what you're accusing me of. This is unprofessional, even by your standards." The audience gasped audibly at that last comment. Tom had just crossed a line, and everyone in the studio knew it. Whoopi's face darkened, and she leaned back in her chair like a predator preparing to strike. "My standards," she repeated slowly, savoring each word. "Let me tell you something about standards, Mr. Top Gun. I've been in this business longer than you've been jumping on couches and spouting nonsense about your bizarre beliefs. I've earned my place at this table through talent and hard work, not through some manufactured Hollywood mythology." Sarah Haynes made another attempt to defuse the situation. "Perhaps we could take a moment to reset here. Tom, I'm sure you have some great stories about working with the cast and crew on your latest project. But Tom was no longer interested in playing nice. The gloves were coming off, and the audience could sense it. You know what, Sarah? I appreciate your efforts to keep this civilized, but I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. Whoopi, you clearly have some personal vendetta against me. And frankly, I'm getting tired of your passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled insults. Passive-aggressive. Whoopi stood up from her chair, towering over the table with an intimidating presence that made everyone in the studio take notice. There's nothing passive about what I'm about to say to you, Tom Cruise. Nothing passive at all. The tension in the room was now so thick you could cut it with a knife. The other panelists were looking back and forth between Whoopi and Tom like spectators at a tennis match, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch the carnage unfold. The studio audience was completely silent, mesmerized by the train wreck happening before their eyes. Then say it, Tom challenged, rising from his own chair to meet Whoopi's intimidating stance. Stop dancing around whatever it is you want to accuse me of, and just say it. Let's get this over with. Whoopi's eyes narrowed to slits, and a cruel smile played at the corners of her mouth. Oh, I'm going to say it all right. I'm going to say exactly what everyone in this room is thinking, but is too polite to voice. The confrontation was reaching a boiling point, and it was clear that neither Tom nor Whoopi was going to back down. The other panelists watched in horror, as their routine morning show transformed into something resembling a gladiator match, with two titans of entertainment about to engage in verbal combat that would leave only one standing. The studio lights seemed to burn brighter as Whoopi Goldberg prepared to deliver what would become the most controversial moment in The View's history. Her voice dropped to a menacing whisper that somehow carried more weight than any scream could have managed. What everyone's thinking, Tom, is that you're nothing more than a carefully manufactured product. A fake smile plastered on top of a hollow shell of a man who's spent so many years pretending to be someone he's not that he's forgotten who he actually is underneath all that Hollywood nonsense. Tom's face flushed red, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. You don't know anything about me, Whoopi. You sit behind that desk throwing stones at people you've never taken the time to understand, hiding behind your so-called moral authority while tearing down anyone who doesn't fit your narrow worldview. My narrow worldview. Whoopi's laugh was harsh and bitter. That's rich coming from someone who's been brainwashed by a cult that thinks aliens are coming to save us all. Tell me, Tom, how's that working out for you? All those years of therapy sessions and spiritual cleansing, and you still can't maintain a relationship with any woman who's smart enough to see through your act. The audience gasped collectively. Several people in the front row covered their mouths in shock. Joy Behar's eyes widened with a mixture of horror and fascination, while Sunny Hostin looked like she was about to be sick. Sarah Haynes had gone completely pale, and Alyssa Farah Griffin was frantically looking around for someone, anyone, to intervene. Tom's voice turned ice cold. You want to go there? Really? Because if we're talking about personal lives and failed relationships, I think the audience might be interested to hear about your own track record of burning bridges with anyone who dares to disagree with you. Don't you dare, Whoopi snarled, pointing an accusatory finger across the table. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. I've never hidden who I am from the public. I've never pretended to be some perfect little angel while secretly belonging to an organization that destroys families and silences critics. Ladies, please. Sarah Haynes finally found her voice, standing up from her chair in a desperate attempt to restore order. This is getting way out of hand. We need to take a step back and remember that we're on live television. But neither Tom nor Whoopi was listening to reason anymore. They were locked in a death spiral of mutual destruction, each determined to land the killing blow that would end their opponent once and for all. You know what your problem is, Whoopi. Tom's voice was rising now, his carefully cultivated public persona cracking like a dam under pressure. You're a bitter, angry woman who can't stand the fact that some people in this world have found happiness and success without needing to tear others down to feel better about themselves. Happiness. Whoopi threw back her head and laughed with genuine amusement. You call that happiness? Jumping from wife to wife like you're collecting trophies? Alienating your own children? Living in a fantasy world where you're the hero of your own action movie instead of dealing with reality? The other panelists were now openly staring in horror at the carnage unfolding before them. Joy Behar, who had started the morning excited about the possibility of good television, was now looking genuinely concerned about the direction things had taken. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was personal destruction happening in real time. At least I don't spend my days sitting at a table with a bunch of women I can't stand, pretending to be their friend while secretly resenting every breath they take. Tom shot back, his voice dripping with venom. How does it feel, Whoopi, to know that everyone around you is walking on eggshells, afraid to say what they really think because they know you'll destroy them the moment they step out of line? The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Sunny Hostin's mouth fell open, and for a moment, she looked like she might actually agree with Tom's assessment. Alyssa Farah Griffin was frantically gesturing to someone off camera, presumably trying to get the producers to intervene before things got even worse. You have no idea what you're talking about. Whoopi's voice was shaking now, whether from rage or something else entirely. These women are my friends, my colleagues, my family. Unlike you, I don't have to pay people to pretend to like me. Friends. Tom laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it when you bulldoze over them every time they try to express an opinion that doesn't align with yours? When you cut them off mid-sentence because their thoughts don't match your agenda? Some friendship that must be. Joy Behar, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. Tom, I think you should probably stop talking now. This isn't going to end well for anyone. But Tom was beyond listening to advice. He was in full attack mode now, years of pent-up frustration with media personalities like Whoopi pouring out in a torrent of barely controlled rage. You want to know what I think, Joy? I think you're all enablers. You sit there day after day, letting her bully guests, intimidate anyone who disagrees with her, and create a toxic environment that masquerades as entertainment. You're complicit in this behavior because you're too afraid to stand up to her. That's enough, Sunny Hostin said firmly, her legal training kicking in as she recognized the potential liability of what was happening. Tom, you're making accusations. That could be considered defamatory. I strongly suggest you stop talking immediately. Defamatory? Tom turned his attention to Sunny, his eyes blazing with fury. The truth isn't defamatory, Sunny. And the truth is that your colleague here has created a hostile work environment that would get anyone else in America fired from their job. Whoopi had heard enough. She began moving around the table toward Tom, her intention unclear but her body language unmistakably threatening. You think you can come onto my show, insult me, insult my colleagues, and just walk away? You think your celebrity status gives you some kind of immunity? Your show? Tom laughed harshly. This isn't your show, Whoopi. This is supposed to be a panel discussion, not the Whoopi Goldberg ego trip hour. But you've turned it into your personal platform for attacking anyone who doesn't bow down to your superior attitude. Sarah Haynes was now openly weeping, overwhelmed by the intensity of the confrontation. Please, both of you, just stop. This isn't what any of us signed up for. We're supposed to be having conversations, not destroying each other. But her plea fell on deaf ears. Tom and Whoopi were now facing each other across the small space between the guest chair and the panel table, their faces inches apart, both breathing heavily from the adrenaline of their verbal combat. You know what your real problem is. Whoopi's voice was now barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than any scream. You can't handle the fact that there are people in this world who aren't impressed by your little dog and pony show. People who see right through your manufactured charm to the empty, desperate man underneath. Tom's response was swift and devastating. And you can't handle the fact that despite all your awards, all your accolades, all your supposed wisdom and experience, you're still just a bitter woman who uses her platform to tear down anyone who represents the success and happiness you've never been able to achieve yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person in the studio, from the audience to the crew to the other panelists, held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The confrontation had reached a point of no return, and everyone knew that whatever came next would determine whether this explosive interview would end in apologies or something far more dramatic. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before Whoopi's face contorted into something resembling pure hatred. When she spoke again, her voice was barely human, more like a growl from some primal place of rage. You want to talk about success and happiness, Tom? Let me tell you what real success looks like. It's not measured in box office numbers or magazine covers. It's measured in the respect you earn from your peers, the integrity you maintain when nobody's watching, and the ability to look at yourself in the mirror without wanting to vomit. Tom's laugh was cold and mirthless. Integrity? From someone who just spent the last 10 minutes launching personal attacks on a guest? From someone who turned what should have been a professional interview into a public execution? You wouldn't know integrity if it slapped you in the face. Ladies and gentlemen, Joy Behar attempted to interject, her voice shaking as she tried to salvage what was left of the show's reputation. I think we need to take a commercial break and regroup here. But Whoopi waved her off dismissively, never taking her eyes off Tom. No commercial break, Joy. I'm not finished with Mr. Hollywood here. You see, Tom, the difference between you and me is that I've never pretended to be anything other than what I am. I don't hide behind a PR team and a carefully crafted image. When I have something to say, I say it. What you are, Tom replied, his voice dripping with contempt, is a bully who's gotten away with this behavior for so long that you actually believe you're justified in it. You think your pain gives you the right to inflict pain on others, but all it really does is expose how small and petty you really are. Alyssa Farah Griffin was now frantically waving at the cameras, trying to get the director's attention to cut the feed. But the producers, recognizing the television gold they were witnessing, kept the cameras rolling despite the obvious train wreck unfolding before them. Small and petty? Whoopi's voice rose to a near shriek. I've been fighting for causes that matter since before you were even a household name. I've used my platform to speak truth to power, to give voice to the voiceless, to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. What have you done besides make movies where you pretend to be a hero? I've entertained millions of people, Tom shot back. I've given them escape, joy, excitement, and hope. I've employed thousands of people, contributed to countless charities, and tried to make the world a better place without preaching to everyone about how they should live their lives. Sunny Hostin had reached her breaking point. Standing up from her chair, she positioned herself between Tom and Whoopi, her arms outstretched like a referee trying to separate two prize fighters. This has to stop right now. Both of you need to take a step back and remember where you are and who you're representing. But Tom wasn't finished. You want to know what really bothers me about you, Whoopi? It's not your opinions, it's not your attitude, it's not even your obvious disdain for me personally. It's the fact that you've created an environment where disagreement is treated as a personal attack, where having different beliefs makes you an enemy, where your colleagues are afraid to speak their minds because they know you'll turn on them the moment they step out of line. That's not true, Sarah Haynes said weakly, but her voice lacked conviction, and everyone in the studio could hear it. Isn't it? Tom turned to address all the panelists now. Sarah, when was the last time you felt comfortable expressing an opinion that you knew Whoopi would disagree with? Sunny, how many times have you started to say something and then stopped? Because you knew it would trigger one of her lectures? Joy, you've been walking on eggshells around her for years, and we all know it. The accusations hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The other panelists exchanged glances that spoke volumes about the truth behind Tom's words. None of them rushed to defend Whoopi, and their silence was more damning than any words could have been. Don't you dare try to turn my colleagues against me, Whoopi snarled, her composure completely shattered now. These women know exactly who I am and what I stand for. They know I fight for what's right, not what's popular. What's right according to who? Tom demanded. According to you? You've appointed yourself judge and jury of everyone else's behavior, everyone else's beliefs, everyone else's choices. You sit at that table like some kind of moral authority, but you're nothing more than a playground bully who never grew up. At this point, security personnel began moving toward the set, clearly having been alerted by the producers that the situation was spiraling out of control. But before they could intervene, Whoopi made one final, desperate attempt to reclaim the upper hand. You know what, Tom? You're right about one thing. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't smile and wave and act like everything's wonderful when it's not. I don't hide behind a fake persona because I'm afraid of what people might think of the real me. And maybe that makes me a bully in your eyes, but at least I'm an honest bully. Tom's response was swift and final. The only thing you're honest about, Whoopi, is your inability to control your own emotions. You've just proven, in front of millions of viewers, that you're exactly the kind of person I thought you were. A bitter, angry woman who can't stand the fact that not everyone in the world revolves around your particular brand of righteousness. That's it. Whoopi screamed, her voice echoing throughout the studio. Get him out of here. Get him off my set right now. The security guards moved in swiftly, but Tom was already standing up, straightening his jacket with the kind of dignity that only comes from knowing you've said exactly what needed to be said. Don't worry, he said calmly, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent studio. I'm leaving. But not because you're throwing me out. I'm leaving because I have better things to do than waste my time with someone who's forgotten what it means to treat people with basic human decency. As Tom walked toward the exit, escorted by security but not restrained, he paused at the edge of the set and turned back to face the cameras one last time. To everyone watching at home, he said, his voice steady and controlled despite everything that had just happened, I want you to remember that this is what happens when you stand up to a bully. They don't like it, they can't handle it, and they try to make you the villain for refusing to be their victim. But sometimes, standing up is the only thing left to do. With that, Tom Cruise walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a studio full of shocked faces and an audience that would be talking about this confrontation for years to come. Whoopi stood at the panel table, breathing heavily, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment, while her colleagues sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. The cameras finally cut to commercial, but the damage was done. The interview that was supposed to promote a movie had instead become a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral out of control when two strong personalities refuse to back down from a confrontation that neither of them was prepared to lose. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Do you think Tom Cruise was justified in his response to Whoopi's attacks, or did he go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more shocking celebrity encounters that you won't see covered anywhere else.